welcome to the regular meeting for the Daly City Library Board of Trustees for June 18, 2019. I call this meeting to order. May we stand to say the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you for keeping us on our toes. May we have roll call, please?
Absolutely. We'll start with Trustee Santos.
Present.
Trustee Fa'apua.
Here.
Vice President Belmeo.
Present.
Trustee Downs.
Present.
And President Logarta.
Present.
All accounted.
Thank you. I hope everyone's had a chance to review tonight's agenda. If there are no updates, may I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Motion. Second.
Second. Thank you. For our meeting, for the minutes from our last meeting in March, on March 19th, 2019, is there a motion to move?
I'll make the motion.
Okay. Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, thank you. May we have the director's report?
Absolutely. Good evening, President Logarta and members of the trustees. This is just a quick overview, I think, at the request of the board to kind of catch up how we got to where we are. And so I'll go through this really quickly for the benefit of our home audience that might not know the rich and wonderful history of the Daly City Public Library. Originally, the Daly City branch was part of what was then called the San Mateo County Free Library. Opened up originally in February of 1916. I was just a young boy at the time. And on February 24th, 1916, the library officially opened. It was the back of a meat market up on Mission Street. And it later that year moved to a store, Pettingill store at 6370 Mission Street at the time. So you can imagine what it was like to go to the library 100 years ago, going to the back of a meat market or a store up on Mission Street. Back then, the collection was a whopping 330 volumes. And in 1917, the library moved again, and this time it actually went to a house. It was the living room of Mr. and Mrs. Frank Woodhouse, and it was on the corner of Wellington and Irving Streets. If you go to that location today, there's actually houses there, but it's not the house that they lived in because their house was torn down when City Hall was built, and that City Hall was torn down, and another City Hall was built, and then that City Hall was torn down when this one opened up. So there's houses over there now. It's on the kind of the neighborhood over there by OLPH. That's where it was. And it wasn't until 1920 that we started getting serious about our libraries in Daly City. And it's a very important date to us because right now it's 1919. Excuse me, it's 2019. I wasn't a time worker. But next year, we will be celebrating the centennial of the Daly City Public Library as we know it today. And these two guys had a real important role in getting it started. John Donald Daly, who Daly City is named after, and John Marchbank were two prominent businessmen at the turn of the century when Daly City was young. Rising from the ashes of the great fire and earthquake in San Francisco from 1906. These guys were both pretty wealthy property owners. John Daly's ranch was at the top of the hill, and John Marchbank ended up acquiring property right adjacent to his that came actually all the way down to kind of in the area where DC Station is today. So it was a pretty good piece of property he had there. And so together, they thought, okay, this business of having a library and a meat market in a store and in somebody's living room, let's make it an official city library. So on April 25th, 1920, almost 100 years ago, they gifted the city of Daly City its first public library, and that is what it looked like. That library, that building still stands today. I see some heads nodding. It looks a little bit different. It had a pretty big makeover in 1938. So it went from that little single room to a bigger, expanded version of the library. And in fact, if you monitor the library Instagram and Facebook pages, you've seen some Throwback Thursday photos of the interior, what it looked like back in the 1930s. And there's been, over the course of time, some incredible people that helped foster the growth of the Daly City Public Library, and probably at the top of that list is Gina O'Rourke. She was like the first real official city librarian. She started back in 1922 and served for 25 years, and she was very involved in Daly City up until her untimely death in 1981, and it's one of those sad footnotes to Daly City history. Gina O'Rourke was actually murdered in her house back in 1981, a really gruesome bit of Daly City history. The murder was never solved, but we certainly treasure all of what Gina O'Rourke left to us, and I know Patricia uses a lot of the scrapbooks and notes that Gina O'Rourke left behind from her notes back in the 20s and 30s to kind of share the history of the library with folks. Sam Chandler was also a really prominent city librarian. He served from 1957 to 1983. One of his notable contributions is, if you've ever seen the book, Daly City, Gateway to the Peninsula, he was the original author of that. We have it online, and it's great information about the beginnings of Daly City. And Sam actually was around and joined us in the celebration of the city's 100th birthday back in 2011, and he's since passed on. So the Library Commission was called the Commission back then and became the Trustees later. That started on June 14th, so we had a little anniversary this week, actually. June 14th, 1951. The mayor back then appointed a 5-member commission. And up until 1959, so from those earliest days at the meat market up until 1959, Daly City was part of the San Mateo County Free Library. It broke away from the San Mateo County Free Library and became an independent municipal library on June 30th of 1959. So that's kind of a broad background of the early days. So the John Daly branch opened in 1920. It was a standalone. It was the hub of Daly City Library for a long time. The Westlake Library was the next one that opened 41 years later over on Southgate. So that opened in 1961 as the Westlake subdivision was booming after the post-World War II building boom. Bayshore branch opened in 1963, originally out on Geneva Avenue. Ceremony branch opened in 1975. That's our main branch today. It opened in conjunction with the Ceremony Library and all the new housing that was coming on board in the Ceremony neighborhood. And then Westlake closed for a period and underwent a pretty thorough remodeling from 1996 to 99. During that time, the collection, or parts of the collection, were moved over to the Larkham Clubhouse, if you're familiar with that, over at Westlake Park. So that served as kind of a temporary Westlake Library for a few years until the Westlake Library reopened in 1999. And then our wonderful new branch, Bayshore, opened in 2006. And then most recently, the John Daly Library opened in 2007. So in 2006, the old branch on Geneva Avenue closed and the collection was moved over to Bayshore. And then in 2007, the old John Daly branch, which is now the Daly City History Museum, closed, and the John Daly branch opened at the War Memorial Community Center. That's a lot of stuff in a short amount.
Is that why the astrophy on Bayshore branch?
Pardon?
The that is on Bayshore
I
branch?
just noted that the branch
Got relooked.
originally was on Geneva Avenue.
Okay, I figured.
It was a mental note to myself
Okay.
to mention that.
I thought you have a special note for that one.
So let's fast forward to 2019 and look at how we compare with other libraries. And as you can see, at $3.7 million annual operating expenses, we are towards the bottom of public libraries in San Mateo County. And one thing I will point out is the libraries that spend less than us, San Bruno and Menlo Park, have a library as compared to Daly City has 4 libraries. So really the closest comparison would be Redwood City, and we're not even halfway to Redwood City's budget. And in terms of the percent of overall budget, of the overall budget, how much the libraries take, Daly City for their public library. We spend about 2% of our entire general fund operating budget on public libraries, which is absolutely the lowest in the county. It seems, most are in the 3 to 4.5% of the budget. So we're at about 2%. We're at the absolute bottom of percent of overall local budget spending on our libraries. And I say this partly because a couple of meetings ago, in fact, it might have even been our last meeting, we had a woman asking all these questions
Asking the
about
questions,
how come
yeah.
we don't have what they have in South City. This is part of the explanation to that. We don't invest in our libraries the way our surrounding cities do. And if you look at the population served, this one is also a telling snapshot. But it's also not completely accurate because the Daly City Bar population served is the one in yellow. And that actually is a reflection of Daly City's population. The reality is we don't just serve Daly City, we serve Broadmoor and Colma as well. So we're probably closer to serving about 120,000 people, maybe even slightly more than that in the northern part of San Mateo County. So we serve the greatest population, and we do it with the smallest percentage of the local municipal budget. And per capita spending, this is another one that's kind of telling too, that we're again at the absolute bottom of per capita spending on our libraries. If you look at Burlingame, they're the leader. They're spending almost $140 per resident. Now, per capita is not always a good one to get too hung up on because we also have the biggest population. So it kind of makes sense. In bigger population, you're spending less per person compared to a smaller city. And in fact, I would say Como does not have a public library, but if they did, because their population is so small, it would probably be a much bigger number. So that's per capita based on the number of residents you're serving. And number of branches, I mentioned before, Redwood City is probably the best comparison because they're the only library out there that has 4 branches. And I misspoke. I said Menlo Park has one. Menlo Park actually has 2. San Bruno is the library that has 1 branch. And you might notice there's a couple other cities that are missing, Pacifica, for example. There are cities that belong to the county system. So those for comparison purposes, I didn't put up. These are actual municipal libraries in the county. And full-time staff, again, you can see San Mateo is the leader there with over 50 full-time staff. We're at about 16, spread over 4 branches. You can compare, again, with Redwood City, who's got 4 branches. They've got more than twice the number of full-time staff that we have. Which also people ask, well, how come your libraries aren't open more? And that's because we're spreading a small staff over 4 branches compared to Redwood City has 4 branches. They get 40 full-time people. We don't have that luxury, unfortunately. We don't do so bad in the number of hours, again, considering the resources we have. So we're about in the middle of the pack there. Not quite up there with Redwood City, but ahead of everybody else except for San Mateo. So we do a lot with what we have. And then again, just overall operating budgets. The only city library that spends less on their library is San Bruno. Again, they have a single branch. Menlo Park spends a little bit more than us, but they have half the number of libraries we have. And again, I look at Redwood City and get envious because they're more than double our budget, and they serve a slightly smaller population. And if you break it down, what are we spending our money on? Like most municipal governments, the lion's share of what the expense is, it goes to salaries to pay the people that work in the library. We also have to pay for services and supplies. We have a lot of subscription services that we pay for, and different programs, costs, and the old fixed costs in there. And everybody, what is fixed costs at $758,000? That's things like the electricity for the building, for the custodial service, utilities for the computer time, the phone lines, and all that stuff. So there's a lot of costs that are beyond our control that they're kind of assigned costs. I think that's even a better term because we don't have any ability to reduce those costs. There is a certain cost for maintaining a building, usually based on square footage and the amount of time custodials there, plus building maintenance when they come out and fix stuff. So that's a big chunk of our budget is beyond our control. It's not discretionary at all. Again, if you want a quick snapshot of where we were 11 years ago, 2008, we had 24 full-time staff, which again, that's not quite Redwood City numbers, but 24 full-time staff was not a bad position to be in, especially if you look at where we are in 2019. We have 16 full-time staff. So the number of full-time staff in the library in Daly City has definitely declined quite a bit over the last 11 years. But we do some amazing things in our 4 libraries. The latest statistics I had, we had over 48,000 registered users, library card holders. We're open almost 6,000 hours per year, which is pretty amazing with the staff we have. And we circulated almost 370,000 items, 30,000 items electronically. You're going to see probably those numbers start to come closer together as people check out more and more electronic items. We did 554 early literacy sessions. We did after-school classes, a workshop, and special events. And all total, over 18,000 people participated in those events at the library. It's pretty amazing. Nearly 50,000 sessions on our public computers. And that's pretty wonderful, too. And it's actually one of our biggest concerns right now, because those public computers that are highly sought after in the library, they're like our #1 commodity for a lot of folks, are about 6 years old and in dire need of replacement. And we don't have the money to replace them. That's about a $100,000 investment. And people come to the library with their own iPads and laptops and other devices. So a lot of people come to the library just to take advantage of the Wi-Fi. Not necessarily everybody's going to use our computers. A lot of them come in with their computer and just like the quiet setting and the fast connection, because it's a pretty darn fast connection at our libraries. And some of you were at our ceremony at Westlake Library a couple months ago now, where thanks very much to the Daly City Public Library Associates, we also provide Wi-Fi hotspots that people can check out and take home. Daly City has a high percentage of households that do have some kind of internet at home. But even if it's 80%, there's still an unmet need for, if you look at the total population, 110,000 people, there still may be 20, 30,000 people living in Daly City that don't have easy access to home internet. So we can take pride in being a place where they can come, not only to use the Wi-Fi and the computers in the library, but now they actually have the ability to take it home with them by checking out a Chromebook and a Wi-Fi hotspot. That's in a nutshell. I took some slides out of there, but I think you get the sense of, because you'll get the questions in the community. Why can't we do more? And the answer is that we right now don't have the resources, either with the staffing or the budget. So
I have a quick question.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned the staffing changes from 24 to 16 between 2008 to 2019.
Yes.
Do you have the number for the operating budget from 2008?
I don't have it at the top of my head, but I can tell you from memory, it's really interesting to see the library's budget, even going back to the 70s, is kind of this flat line with not a lot of growth. And you compare that, we've done, I think at past meetings, if you compare it to the growth of, say, the Daly City Police Department, their growth in terms of the budget is more than 10 times the library's over the last 20 years or so. So other departments' spending is growing, but the library has kind of been flatlined for quite a while.
Or decreasing even.
Yes.
Yeah, we took a big hit to our not only the staffing, but our materials budget. We used to have about $475,000 dedicated to purchasing
Just
new
for just materials.
and that budget has dropped significantly too.
Mr. Curran, 3.7 million for Daly City Libraries. is that the budget for one fiscal year, or is that, how long does the spending that we have to spend this?
That is one fiscal year. Our fiscal year goes from July 1 to June 30th.
Okay, so do we have any, at this point, are we okay with the budget, or where are we at as far as what's there? Do we have a deficit, or
Oh, no.
are we
in
running
terms of
low?
library, we have a stable budget. The city adopts a 2-year budget. So our budget, we're wrapping up what we would call fiscal year 2018-19, and we're about to begin on July 1, we'll begin fiscal year 2019-20. So we have an adopted budget for both those years, and we don't have a deficit. We're right on target.
And do we have a
I
rollover?
don't anticipate any changes in the library budget in the coming year. And, part of the reason is to educate everybody is, all the advocates we can get to, if we're ever going to, there's a lot of demand that we're hearing to restore hours, but we can't restore the hours under our current circumstances.
No FTE, right?
So that opportunity would come with the following fiscal year, which would be 2020, 2021. And that process will start probably in January of 2020.
And how long
And the budget gets adopted usually about May, so a little less than a year from now.
How long we have 3.7 million? I mean, how long did we have that allocate budget just for the libraries, 3.7 million?
That is the current year. There's fluctuations because
Okay.
there are cost of living adjustments for the full-time staff, so it creeps up a little bit.
It goes up, so it's,
Yeah, in fact, I did not bring the budget document, but for next fiscal year, there'll be a slight bump up to reflect the cost of living for the staff mostly.
okay.
So is that kind of how, I'm trying to understand, is that kind of what resulted, that was like the key factor that resulted in the cut in the number of staff, since our budget has has been fairly the same?
So a big part of the budget cuts, a lot of it happened through attrition, and as positions were being frozen, we weren't getting the reauthorization to fill them. So a lot of positions that we historically had eventually were taken off the budget altogether. And that's what really caused us to reduce the number of hours. It got to the point we just didn't have enough physical bodies to keep the hours open. And, as a result of it, the John Daly Library is now open 3 days a week, and the Bayshore Library is open 2 days a week, and it's the same staff at both libraries. So essentially, it's one full-time staff keeping 2 libraries open the best we
Right.
can.
And yet we have a huge population,
We have a big population for sure.
but
Rising,
less
right.
attendance, attending the libraries, and is that the reason why our budget is what it is?
No, it's kind of a
mean-
chicken and egg thing.
Yeah.
If we were open, Bayshore, there was a time Bayshore Library was open 6 days a week. I think when people get into a pattern of visiting their libraries, and they know they don't have to think, oh shoot, it's Wednesday, are they open?
Right.
I think when you just go out, you don't think of what day it is or whether they're out. It's kind of when you go to the grocery store, you don't stop and think, oh wait, today's Tuesday, is the store open? So I think when that pattern got disrupted, people that got used to going to the library a lot, I've heard anecdotally that more of them in the Bayshore started going to Visitation Valley in San Francisco because that library is open 7 days a week and it's not that much further from the neighborhood. I don't know if the same is true around the John Daly War Memorial neighborhood near the top of the hill. I imagine it might be. I don't. And we heard from a patron at our last meeting who.
No, Bayshore, it's way high. It's very
Yeah, it's
inclined.
inaccessible.
It's like you're looking right there. It's so it could be a reason
Maybe
to
hard
why
to- hard to access is what you're saying?
to access, and hard and even to just to
And
walk
absolutely, we have heard that.
up there.
When did we reduce the hours for Bayshore? Because you're saying it was once 6 days a week. When did that reduction happen? What year?
It's happened incrementally, probably over the last 8 years or so.
Okay.
But the last real big change happened when we had one of our branch managers left,
Okay.
and it left an unfilled position. And actually, we had the result is we have a single manager covering what was 2 branches.
Right.
That was the biggest change.
That was the biggest change. So in your timeline, so in looking at it, it looks like Daly City's maintained 4 libraries, right, since like 1975?
Yes.
Give or take some adjustments. And then in 2008, you're saying we had about 24 FTE throughout the branches. And then I remember that's around the time where like the economic downturn happened, right? Did that affect our libraries?
And there's been a few, but
Yeah,
that was the biggest.
That was the biggest,
the
2008,
Great Recession or the
2009.
reset, yes. And at that time, I will say that every single department in this city was hit hard.
Was hit, okay.
With staffing reductions.
And then, so, I mean, we're looking, fast forward to 2019, a third less FTE, but I'm assuming more usage of the library. Or would it be about the same? What would you say?
I think the usage, and I'm going from memory, I don't have the numbers in front of me. But Ceremony and Westlake especially have had pretty solid, steady participation. And even those libraries have had reductions. You know, the Westlake Library is now closed on Mondays, and it's the only library we have that's open on Saturday, whereas Ceremony is open Monday through Friday, but historically that was open on Saturdays too. So, but even with the reduction, the participation and attendance has still been pretty strong, especially at those 2. And I think it's growing at Bayshore and John Daly.
I mean, I can say
it
every time I
fluctuates with the
visit,
school year, too.
it's pretty busy. So, Bayshore not so much, but and then just was it the reduction in staffing, the reduction in monies that we get, was it like just like declining like every year since like around like 2008?
Right, and that was a big cut year. That was the year we not only took a staffing cut, and we didn't lay anybody off. So these were all as people retired.
Retirees, and you
they
just never
held
filled the position
frozen.
again. Yeah.
We also did take a significant cut to the materials budget. That
Right.
was, it was getting near about $500,000 a year. And I think it's under $200,000 a year now. So that one was really hit hard.
Okay. Thank you. Any follow-up questions?
I think my last other question. So you were mentioning, I'm just really curious around, because then I don't know, the numbers are just really daunting to me, right? Like 2% of our general fund, like that's just really small. $9,000 for program costs. Like I think, like working with young people, like $9,000 is not a lot to do things. And so I'm just really curious around like the budget prioritization, and just curious to know is there an opportunity to impact how prioritization happens in the city's budget to advocate to increase the percentage of funding for the libraries. Like you mentioned, like January 2020 is a time that we're going to start looking at the next fiscal year.
Right.
But yeah, so I guess around that, like who's impacting the budget prioritization? Like who's kind of landing on the final number around how much of the general fund gets allocated? And like, is there an opportunity for patrons or even library staff or library advocates to weigh in and impact some of that prioritization?
Absolutely. I mean, the residents, the users, the trustees, staff, unions have all weighed in. And it's kind of a long, complicated process, generally beginning with our finance department. They're doing all the revenue projections and they're doing all the calculations. And the biggest expense the city has is personnel. So they come up with all the calculations. So even before we get to the starting line, they already know, given the current scenario, what the expenses are going to be related to personnel. On that slide too, I showed you the fixed expenses. Those, they all do all the calculations to come up with the energy costs are going to be the custodial fees and maintenance fees and those kinds of things. So the discretionary funds to redirect to other things is a smaller and smaller piece. So how do we get a bigger piece of the whole pie is the challenge. Advocacy is probably the best strategy. Sharing information like what we just saw tonight is you talk to patrons. Did you know that compared to other cities. We're not spending as much. How do you feel about it? And some of them might get energized. And, ultimately the city council and the mayor adopt the budget. And it usually, before it gets to them, it's gone through a lot of iterations. So, having them aware of the plight of the library, I think, is an important thing too.
And I assume there would be some public presentations around during the budget development process, right?
Yeah,
Where we
and
can,
it happens pretty quick,
comment Okay.
But we definitely will keep you guys informed along the way. In fact, maybe even closer to the holidays, so we don't get into January and all of a sudden, as soon as, so right now we don't, our finance director retired recently, so there'll be a recruitment and hopefully somebody in place in the fall that can really hit the ground with both feet running. And it's going to be a new set of eyes looking at the process, and that might work out well. I think libraries have been an easy target for cuts because nobody wants to cut public safety. And that is where the lion's share of any city governments that provides police and fire. You think about it, we have 5 fire stations. And unlike the libraries, they are staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So that's a lot dedicated to that. And it's the same with police. It's a 24-hour, 7-day a week. And in their case, it's not just the salaries, but the cars and equipment and everything that comes along with it. So public safety, it's always a priority for every community, and the cost of maintaining public safety at levels that I think people have grown accustomed to expect in the community have gone up. And historically, if you look, the world has shifted a couple of times, and I think probably in my experience, the biggest shift came after 9/11. And public safety became an absolute #1 priority for everybody. And so more and more resources have been dedicated to public safety, not just in Daly City, across the country. So, when there's only so much pie to go with and you're giving more and more to one, something else has got to shrink. And it's unfortunate that library is probably taken it the hardest as a percentage of the original, where we were. On the recreation side, we're holding pretty solid. Now, on the recreation side, unlike the library is free. Recreation, we do a little bit of cost recovery. We certainly subsidize almost all of our youth and senior activities, but there's some revenue being generated on recreation. We tend not to generate revenue. And we do plug holes with grants, the Daly City Public Library, certainly, and we've pursued other grants. We're pursuing grants for the computer replacements, and we're pursuing another grant that would boost that $9,000 for programs by another $25,000 if we're successful. And we were talking about how wonderful that would, the awesome programs we could do with another $25,000 too. So, yeah, we're out there shaking the trees and trying to get other funding sources. Wells Fargo certainly has helped out. The Gallery Foundation every year writes us a nice check. So, thank you.
Thank you. So now for our trustees report. So it's been a while since we
skipped
met.
one.
City Library.
Something new and exciting and wonderful.
Just kidding.
It is my pleasure.
Rewind.
My pleasure to introduce to you Patricia Delara, who is our newest full-time employee in the Daly City Public Library. And she is our branch manager,
Welcome.
John Daly and Bayshore, and she has a wonderful new program to share with you this evening.
Thank you for having me here tonight. The Bayshore Library is excited to announce that it will be launching a seed library this summer with support from local community organizations such as Our Second Home and the San Mateo County Offices of Sustainability and the Bayshore School. The seed library offers a chance for the community to grow and harvest their own fresh foods. The variety of seeds offered will be dependent on the planting calendar for this area. I was advised by local master gardeners on which plants would thrive in the Bayshore neighborhood specifically because it is the less foggier area in Daly City, which is fortunate. The availability of the seeds will alternate and vary each season. This initial launch will include broccoli, cabbage, beet, and cauliflower seeds. And we are starting small because it is our first run of having a seed library. Other libraries have done this before. But we are just starting with a small selection, considering Bayshore is also only open 2 days a week. And we will like to see where it goes from there. And we encourage you all to spread the word about this wonderful new resource available to our community. And it is completely free. Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you. Did you want to go ahead?
Go ahead.
So I'm kind of seeing a theme here because at my daughter's school, they're doing something very similar. And she's like, oh, I planted, I don't know what she planted, but she was like, it's starting to grow, and she's wanting to do something at the house. So that's really cool because I think 2 years ago we didn't have anything like this. Where did you all get the idea for this?
At other libraries I've visited, they've had some sort of seed program. Some libraries offer seed lending. So if you plant it, and you can return the seeds from the plants that you've grown. But this idea stemmed from the fact that I've spoken to a lot of people around the Bayshore community while I'm getting to know them as the new librarian. And I've noticed that there is a lack of resources to fresh foods in the Bayshore neighborhood. And I myself lived in the Bayview, which isn't too far. And that entire area is, there's a lack of fresh foods. And when I met with EE from Our Second Home, she had expressed that she would like to start a community garden in that area. And I'm totally on board with that idea. I also went to visit the Bayshore School. They have their own little community garden in their school. So I started to sense a pattern here. There's people that would like something like this in their community, and having the seed library would give a chance to offer a little extra to that little, incentive to grow something, yes.
Teaches them a skill too, so
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah. I think it's a great idea, especially for the kids, right? So they start, like me, way back home. So I love to plant. So, yeah, it's great.
Thank you.
I love the idea too, because it kind of brings us full circle. We talked about the origins of the library back in the 19-teens. At that time, this was very much an agricultural district. There was a lot of crops out here. And the types she described, a lot of cabbage. Daly City was a big cabbage growing region back then, and artichokes and broccoli and kind of cooler climate plants. So it ties it all back together. Next we'll do hog farming. No, probably not. There was a lot of hog farming in this area too.
When did you start the program? Or
This program?
yes.
I am in the process of launching it, so I did a soft launch today, actually, at the Bayshore branch.
Nice.
But I haven't announced anything publicly yet because I'm still tying a few loose ends and just getting everything ready.
Do you have a flyer?
I do not have a flyer yet, so I will have that available for you shortly.
I have my board meeting on Thursday. I can even announce it to the board.
Yeah, I
at
think
Bayshore.
I can have something for you by Thursday.
Okay, thank you.
Pressure.
Yeah. I deeply appreciate what you're doing, Patricia, because I think it does it reimagines the purpose of libraries to become more than just like going in and getting a book or going in and getting some resources. So I just wanted to name that I really appreciate that you're deepening this opportunity to build with community, and I'm just curious, like, what are opportunities to support that work, whether voluntarily or other ways.
Right now, you mean with the seed library?
With the seed library and even
so,
your launch.
right now, since we only have about, I think, eight variations in our tiny seed library, I think just getting the word out there would be enough. And, we can base it off of how many people use the seeds and how often we run out. I have gotten advice from other librarians that have their own seed libraries, from East Palo Alto Library, for example. They've given me suggestions on who to reach out to get seeds for free. For this one, I pretty much had to use funds, but I used probably $50 worth, and that was enough just to start. But I have reached out to the Home Depot and asked, if they would be willing to lend seeds for our program, so that we wouldn't have to spend on that.
Are you trying to work with the Boys and Girls Club right down there with you?
Yes, I'm actively trying to work with the Boys and Girls Club. I'm actually meeting with them this week.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah, to tell them about our summer learning challenge and our new seed program.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I just want to appreciate your effort as well. Like, I think food, like libraries bring people together, but also like food, like everyone loves food, right? So like food brings everyone together too. And it would be interesting to like connect like the seed library and like how libraries offer like, like the rich histories of like, the fruits that they're growing or the vegetables that they're growing. And so, yeah, it would be interesting to like really connect like, like where do broccolis come from? Why do broccolis grow in certain areas? So like promoting like not just like food, but also like literacy of like the history. And so I feel like, that would get people interested in like learning more about the things that are happening and like the history of things, and connect it to like their own lives for now too. So I would be interested in like, helping support that too.
Thank you. And also, just to add, this is also kind of the initiative to start something bigger in regards to community gardens. Other libraries, again, have followed this model of having a seed library and then having a community garden. I would like to just mention East Palo Alto Library, for example, started with a seed library, and then they had a garden right next to their entrance. And there was a photo on their Instagram I saw where they were actually giving away the vegetables that grew in their library garden to the patrons. And I just, again, echoing off what you said, I think it's another great way to provide for the community. And I think in the long run, if we see that this program is run successfully, then that could be something we can visit, since it looks like there is at least a demand of community gardens in the area. So.
Is there any way you can attend our board meeting and maybe talk more, put you on our agenda and you can talk more about it? I mean, it sounds really a good plan. And there's going to be part of Bayshore that is going to be redeveloped by Mid-Penn. So all that area too is going to be, and then we can figure out a way to put a garden for the community. I would like to see like the afterwards, the celebration of the seed library, making that whole soup for the soup for the soul, like all vegetables. And it will be nice, to have that part of the community.
Yeah, I think
you got my support.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, this is really
And welcome aboard.
Thank you all.
She's off to a great start, I will say.
So, yeah, food really does connect people. We saw a lot of engagement with all of us with this topic. So, give us updates, let us know what you need from us. We definitely support you. Thank you so much, and welcome.
And I think to Teresa's point, if there's any way you can send us like a digital copy of a flyer, we'd be happy to blast it out to our networks.
Will do. Thank you.
So, thank you so much. So for our trustees report, so it has been a while since we all met, and 3 of you are new to the board. So I'm gonna ask for some, active dialogue as it pertains to our advocacy. Remember, our advocacy is creating awareness, communication, community involvement, and fundraising. I'm also going to ask that you have your calendars open so we can get some dates to schedule. So when it comes to advocacy and creating awareness, we haven't had our coffee with trustees since Library Week, where we were able to observe, the launch of the new Chromebooks and hotspots, which have been a big hit. So I'd actually like to get something on the calendar so that we can connect with Shayla and actually with Patricia as well, so we could visit and do like a coffee with trustees and maybe even get like a council member to join us. And we can just set out a tentative date right now. How is everybody's week looking? The week of possibly the end of July. Looking at possibly the 25th.
Thursday.
What's gonna be on that day?
Try to set up like a coffee with trustees, like a tentative.
Where?
We could get the details from Shayla, but,
Okay.
and then we would have to see if their library is available. So I'll speak to Shayla, I'll speak to Sarah, speak to Patricia.
I'm free before 10 a.m. or after 3 p.m.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll do iced coffee then.
Iced coffee. After 3 is actually, that might be a good time, right, Joseph? Because it'll be a lot of, I don't know, when I go with my daughter, there's like a lot of traffic in the late afternoon.
But depending
But
on
then
where we're going to be at.
I would assume we would either do it at one of the main branches, so Ceremony or.
We did it over there. I was
or-
gonna say
Should we do it at- we can bring it
because
to
she's
Bayshore
launching
since
that
she's
new
here.
thing.
And then there's going to be food.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
There's going to be food, right? So what about,
Start serving.
should we aim for Thursday, the 25th?
Okay.
You all are open on Thursday. Oh, but what time do you guys close? 6, right? So we can do a 3 to 6 if you guys are around. Even just a few of us is fine too, but just to get something on the calendar. Either that or we can head over to August 8th.
I'm okay with July because August, it's the beginning school. I have another big project coming up for my organization, so
Okay, so.
I'm okay with, I don't know about the rest.
July would be okay for
And
me.
if you want to do the both dates, I can do August 8th if we want to just put that as something tentative.
As
and we can
something
revisit.
tentative. So we'll do July 25th and or August 8th. Sounds good. And we'll do iced coffee. Okay. So, for our communications, has anybody had an opportunity within the last month to visit any of the libraries?
I went to Westlake.
Okay.
And it seems like they're grown. They're, because it's summertime now. The attendance there, the population.
They're
grow.
busy.
Yeah.
They're very busy.
They're constantly
Yeah.
having children there. And it's funny how I see children just crossing the street, to be in the library without any adult. So to me, it was like, what a marvelous thing to have there. They don't have a park there, but they're running to the library to spend time there. And some of them, their parents are doing laundry in that laundromat there, and they're inside there. Because I would ask, who you here with? Just to me, where's mommy? Doing laundry, but they're inside using the computers
Awesome.
and whatnot. And
It's a time.
yeah, the staff there, they don't mind. They're really friendly and open arms to the neighborhood. So that was like 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks
I
ago?
visited, yeah.
So I had the opportunity to visit sometime last month too, and it was Westlake as well. And I got an opportunity to speak to Sarah. And I just, followed up on the hotspots and the Chromebooks, and it looks like the usage is really, really popular. But they do have like some on hand. It's not like they're all checked out. But she said they've been getting a lot of patrons wanting the hotspots, more so than the Chromebooks, which is kind of interesting. In speaking with her, she had some stories that she wanted to tell me. So not only are the patrons coming in there for computers, book usage, right? They're really going there to speak to the people to learn skills. She actually had a patron that was a victim of fraud, and one of the do you guys call each other like team members or I don't know.
Associate.
Yeah, one of the staff was helping them identify fraud, and, educating them on, what to do, what not to do. A lot of Craigslist scammers trying to like reach out to a lot of like elderly and young, and in banking, I see this a lot too. So she was actually able to educate this patron, and I thought that was amazing. Another story she told was of a staff teaching somebody who couldn't get their pension. They couldn't get their pension in their bank account. So what they did was they taught them how to log on to the site and help them navigate through the website so that this person can get their pension. And it was just, I was enlightened, because not only are they there for the community, just, for them to check out books and use the computer, but they're really learning some skills. And then it kind of just ties full circle to what you're doing, right? Getting a garden started at your library. And so that kind of leads me, I'm gonna skip the, oh no, I'm not gonna skip anything. So that kind of leads me to, talk about like, remember, Joseph, there was a time where Trisha, the previous board member, we wanted to do kind of like a video getting compelling statements from staff members, from the community. And then we went into this whole thing, like it would be really expensive to get the equipment with limited funding. And Sarah actually followed up on that. She was like, oh, hey, are we still going to do, like those videos? And I was like, it kind of like fell by the wayside just because there was a change in our board. But let me bring this up to the board. And I'm thinking, we're talking about Instagram. You mentioned hashtag. Why don't we just, can't we just like use our cell phones and record videos of maybe patrons that might want to tell a story, of, staff that might want to tell a story, and then can we post it on like social media? I don't know if that intervenes with anything that but it would be free. And it would be, like I will definitely volunteer my time to do it. And then we don't have to hire an editor or buy equipment or anything like that.
I think we don't have I think it sounds like a good idea. However, there are logistics that we had to look at. First of all, consents,
Right.
And the privacy. And I think we need to kind of have just a letter. If we interview that person, that they need to sign it, that you are willingly to allow us to use this as a testimony or something, or wherever we're going to use it. I just want to protect ourselves and, the library.
We did work with the city attorney's office. We do have a standard
So
release
there is
form,
a standard release
photo
form.
release form that we could use. And also, I don't know how many of you follow the recreation side on Facebook and Instagram. They've got some really talented kids that make amazing videos, and I could probably steer them over to the library.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I was gonna say that. I was like, young people are in like media pathways.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like we can pull some of that.
Yeah, where we don't need
And
to spend a
sitting
big budget.
directly behind you on the other side of that
Yeah.
wall, we also
Yeah.
have a very talented videographer and videographer.
It sounds like an awesome idea.
The one who broadcasts our meetings
Yes.
too. So we do have some resources. I think it's coordinating the effort. And,
Okay.
So we'll definitely put that on our agenda, if you all are on board with that.
Then I'm sorry, I'm going to jump in here too,
Ah.
just because I am chair of the communications committee now, according to Shayla. So I have been the one handling the social media for Daly City Library. So I just wanted to put myself out there too, that I would.
You're a
be part of
superstar,
this.
Patricia.
You're a superstar. And I will say all the council members have a social media, so they'll be able to, see these stories. I mean, I think it's very important.
I think, Angela, what would be helpful for the next meeting is if you can kind of give just a little bit of background of like, what do we have prepared already around developing this? What are like the specific needs? Because I guess I'm just a little bit unclear from that last plan to
Okay.
like, yeah.
Yeah, so the last plan, what we wanted to do, and I'm just gonna, because it's very,
It's short, okay.
it's just an idea.
Okay.
We haven't
That
activated,
sounds
right? But it's an idea that Tricia, the previous president, put out, that, we need to get like snippets of videos and stories of the communities. And that's why we've been like visiting, like different branches, trying to get a feel for what the need is, as we are the liaison for the community, the council, the staff. And so what she was thinking of, creating a video and getting like a videographer, getting equipment that we could have so that we can have kind of a video to present to like the city council, but also to post on like social media. But we may not even need the equipment, right?
Yeah.
We actually should be able to do it ourselves, but we have to be in agreement for it. It's just an idea as of now. But I'd like to, if we give ourselves like a timeline and kind of start working on it, maybe we can have something present by the end of the summer, or end of fall.
Yeah,
Something
yeah.
to
I
that
think it would
effect.
just be,
Yeah.
it would just be great to get a little bit more specific around like the outcome. Like I think the city, like if the outcome is like we hope to present this to city council to get X response, like I feel like it would be great to just kind of land on that before we move,
Yeah.
as we like, so we're super solid. But I think it's a great idea as well. Yeah.
Okay. So for community involvement, I don't really have any upcoming events. I know that there's Cars in Colma in September.
and I think it's moved to Seremoni.
Oh, it's moved to Seremoni.
And I think
Yeah.
Dr. Lex may give us an update on that.
Okay, so, and when it comes to fundraising, I know I've been working individually, kind of like with Victoria, kind of like letting her know to apply for like certain grants. But, what ideas do we have for fundraising for the board?
Well, we can have ideas, but we need to know what digits are we looking at? What numbers do we need to, we gotta have that number there. So and then we break the fundraisers down, or do we need to have bits of it, or do we need to have just one main fundraiser that covers it all?
With your idea, I think that would be a good like grant application to fund something like this. So, I mean, I think maybe Victoria, I'll speak to Victoria about like maybe we can, and maybe with you on a one-off and getting a grant to fund your new project.
Do we have a grant writer?
I think, well, who does who? Like
The
does-
grant writer, do we
do-
have one?
There's not a staff.
There's
right?
not a staff
And
that's, yeah.
I'm going to interject here too.
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
these 4 pillars came up a while ago. And you guys do a lot, and your main function is kind of policy direction and that kind of stuff. And then there's a separate body
Okay.
that's main objective is fundraising. That's the Daly City Public Library Associates. And I mean, together, you certainly collaborate quite a bit, but I wouldn't put too much energy and effort in fundraising when there's another group that's
Fundraising.
that is the purpose for their existence, is to fundraise to support the Daly City Public Library. So you've got a full plate already. And,
Okay,
yeah,
and that's good to know, because I would like to know what exactly do I need to do on the board, my role on the board, than just scattered and getting overwhelmed everywhere, because.
And I would, just my personal preference is that,
Yeah.
that you not put fundraising as a high priority.
Okay,
because
that's good to know, so let's
Yeah.
cross that out.
Probably
Yeah,
the
okay.
most advocacy and those policy
Yeah.
issues. And I think we don't bring a lot of policy decisions, but I think we're going to bring it next week, anecdotally and off topic completely. But 1 week ago today, I don't know where you guys were, but it was about 175 degrees in Daly
were
City, and
here.
people
Yeah,
were
it was
I was
freezing.
Yeah.
here,
Warm.
melting.
And this is, I'm from LA, so
Yeah.
the heat didn't, I actually like that weather, but I found it really intriguing that we got this alert from Redwood City Library that they were closing because of excessive heat.
It was too warm.
And I thought, what the heck? Some cities, the library actually serve as a cooling center. And sure enough, as the days wore on and the heat at Bayshore, I heard, was it 84 degrees? 84 degrees inside our library. And it got folks talking. And under what conditions or authority did Redwood City Public Library close? It's like, oh, well, they have a policy that if the interior of the library hits, and it's like 82 degrees or 80 degrees, they have a lower threshold, they close the library for the welfare of the employees and the patrons and everybody else. And so we do not have such a policy, but we'll bring one for your consideration at the next
And I mean,
meeting.
how often do
So
we
in-
get
in
hot here in
that
Daly City?
100-year event, if it happens
Not
again
used to
within the
that.
next couple of years, that we'll have some guidelines.
It
because
happens once
it
and we
seemed
continue
arbitrary
talking
to
about
me
it, right?
to close the library because of heat. I'm like,
Yeah.
open the windows, but
Yeah.
84 degrees is pretty warm,
Pretty
Um,
warm.
It is.
especially for this part of the world.
Us Bay Area people are not used to
Anyway,
this.
so you don't wrestle with a lot of policies, and it might make yourselves familiar. Over the years, the Board of Trustees has adopted lots of various policies pertaining to the libraries. So this would be a new thing for you to consider at the next meeting. So again, my point is really focus on advocacy, policy, and let the fundraising function go to the fundraising body. It'd be one less thing for you guys, because you do a lot and you're not compensated, you're giving up your time, not just for these meetings, but you're out in the community and, talking about being out in the library. So I think that's an awful lot that you give to the community, and I, for one, thank you
How
for that.
often was the policies revisited?
It varies on what the subject is and as new things come up.
Is it
and,
new form, new policies, or does it needs to be edited, or does it need to be? I'm just wondering what the policies are there. I haven't presented with any policies
well,
or.
I apologize. We keep them all online and we post at
Okay.
every library. I can direct you to the ones we have. And,
That would be great.
And generally, as everything over time becomes dated and stale and needs tweaking, whether it's patron behavior has been one that this board has grappled with, because more and more libraries in Daly City and San Francisco, everywhere else, become a sanctuary for homeless folks, which, that
So maybe that's
it's a
what
public
policy we
space.
need to
It's
to look
free.
at.
In the wintertime, it's warm. But with that, we've had issues where homeless people coming in off the street, especially at John Daly, probably more than anywhere else, sometimes there's hygiene issues that it becomes so intense that it affects
The staff.
the staff and the
Yeah,
other patrons.
patrons,
So,
yeah.
so that's, for an example, that is a
That's
policy
an,
that we've revisited not too long ago.
Do you guys have that policy?
Yes, we have a policy.
Okay. And what is it? Like, what would you do?
I don't have it committed to memory, but there,
Okay.
I mean, specifically on that, I know we have an offensive odor policy, which I mean, the scary, I don't like subjective policies, and some of them are fairly subjective, because what might be offensive to me
Might not be for
Yeah,
somebody
and
else.
oftentimes, someone coming
Absolutely.
in off the street,
Right.
they may have other issues too, that their self-awareness isn't always the greatest. But that's an example. This heat thing would be a brand-new thing we've never encountered before in my time here. Patron behavior issues. I know this board, prior members of the board, had really long discussions about what certain patron behavior, what would be acceptable and what wouldn't be acceptable. Even in minors, unattended minors in the library, at what point does that become
Gotta
a problem?
drop in.
It is tragic and sad, but we've had instances where parents have literally dumped young children off at the library
And stay there
left.
like all day.
And as young as 2 and 3 years old.
Oh, wow.
So that the kids don't even have the ability to communicate who they are, why they're there, and staff, like, there's a kid running around in a soiled diaper and it doesn't, and then you find out there is no parent or guardian. This kid was literally dumped there. We've had that happen more than once. So little things like that,
And how do we make the patrons aware of the policies that we hold?
Oftentimes, especially with the behavior policy,
That's the time we pull out the
It's
card.
explained, yeah, and we'll say,
Okay.
what you're doing, and kids in the spring sometimes go crazy, and their use of profanity and stuff like that. We will actually direct them, like, this is why we're asking your compliance here. This is an actual policy that we're asking for you to conform to. So they're out, they're online, they're in binders, they're around, but it's usually some type of behavior that would lead us to share with them the policy that affects whatever their circumstances. So
Okay.
anyway.
Well, that sounds like a
That was
work.
a
Sounds
really
like,
long.
yeah, that was long.
I mean, policies itself, it's
Yeah.
a lot of work.
But I think it's good dialogue for us, to take a look at, and but fair enough. We'll leave fundraising to DCPLA, but I encourage all of us to work with DCPLA to help and advocate for them, which brings us to DCPLA's report. We have Bill Lex. Welcome.
Hi, Mr. Lex.
To the Board of Trustees. Before I present the DCPLA report, I'd like to just make some comments as a citizen of Daly City based on some of the discussions that have gone on tonight. We talk about the dismal state of funding for Daly City libraries, and Joseph again illustrated that very well tonight with his presentation on the state of the libraries. And we know that public safety is a priority and takes up a large percentage of the budget. But what I would like to point out is that we have the lowest per capita spending of all of the cities, and they have public safety needs and departments as well. And we're spending less as a system compared to other libraries that have public safety departments that are funded. And I don't think they're probably underfunded. So in terms of advocacy, every one of you has been appointed by a city council member, and I would encourage you to talk to that member. Two of the members, Ray and Rod, are former members of the Library Board of Trustees. So they should be taking a proactive position, in my opinion, to shift some funding toward the library above this 2% level. It can be very incremental, 2.1, 2.2, but after a little while, it will begin to make a difference. And finally, in terms of the advocacy, I think that's a very important role for you. And I appreciate Joseph's comments on the role that DCPLA plays. But we're primarily trying to raise funds from the public sector. And there are private sector funds that perhaps you can be an advocate for from the county. The discussion in the past of a possible parcel tax for Daly City to support libraries. I know that seems like a pie-in-the-eye dream, but it's something that other municipalities do. And if libraries are a priority for Daly City, perhaps that's something that we should, as a Board of Trustees, consider advocating for. So I'll take off that hat. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And shift to my DCPLA report. Going back to your State of the Libraries report, Joseph, would it be possible to get a copy of your PowerPoint presentation? And Yeah, that would be perfect. I'd love to have that. Thank you. And I'll just ask you in advance if you could do a summary of that at the DCPLA meeting, or have Chayla or some representative of the library do that, so that's shared with the DCPLA board members. And Patricia, welcome. I was impressed with the Seed Library initiative, and I hope that that can be reported to the DCPLA board as well, because I won't cover it nearly as well as you did, although if it's not mentioned by somebody else, I certainly will. The Daly City Public Library Associates Board meeting was on May 28th. First thing that we talked about was Crazy About Cars, and as just pointed out, it's going to be at Serramonte. The sponsor packets are going to be emailed out 1 month ahead of the event. Toyota, Jefferson High School District, Skyline College have all signed up to participate. It's going to be from noon to 3. And probably, as I recall, in the area of the farmers market that meets on Thursdays and Saturdays. I didn't write the date down. It's in September. Actually, I can tell you.
What's the event?
Say September.
Let me check here. Joseph thinks the 21st, perhaps.
And so it's a car show, Mr. Licks?
Yes. It's a car show and a competition.
And who's,
Oh, no, it's not the 21st. Before that.
It brings people who have
Cars.
restored cars. We'll bring them for display.
I know a lot of people that I used to do car shows for Jefferson.
It's September 14th. Yes.
Okay. Would you like me to? We'll talk later.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. Moving on, there was a discussion about the appointment of new directors and recruiting directors because 4 members of our board are going to be termed out. Each director is eligible to serve 2 terms, and we have a number of people who have been great board members that we're going to lose because of that. If they sit out a term, they can come back, but we're going to have to replace them. So if you have any ideas about people that you think would be good DCPLA members, please forward them to the Executive Director, Victoria. The Executive Director report covered a number of topics. Victoria led off with one that was very interesting. There is a Sunlight Foundation and a Sunlight Giving Grant opportunity for up to $75,000, if I recall. This is for children in the 0 to 5 years of age range to provide safe spaces. Libraries are part of the target population for that. And so Victoria had discovered this and had asked Chayla for ideas about how the libraries might be able to use this. At the meeting, there was no input from the library in terms of ways that this money could be used if it were applied for. So I think Chayla was going to go back and revisit that with some of the other librarians and hopefully bring back some ideas of ways that we might be able to bring that money into our system. The Coleman Community Center has been reserved for March 11th and 12th for the St. Patrick's Day lunch in 2020. The lunch itself is on the 12th, but the evening of the 11th is used as a setup period. So that's going to make it a lot easier on all of the volunteers. Graphic novels were a graphic novel grant of $1,500 was presented at the City Council meeting on May 13th by DCPLA. A report was made on the Poetry Jam that was held at Serramonte Center. It was a great success. There were 2 Jefferson High School students and 10 Fernando Rivera students, middle school students, who participated. There was one person who was there and took advantage of an open mic, and there was some discussion about whether or not that was a good idea to have in the future. And because there was no release sign for that person, it was decided that we'll not have any more open mic presenters, that people will have to register ahead of time. DCPLA is planning to have a meeting with the Daly City Arts and Culture Commission, or attend their meeting on July 9th, to discuss poetry jam collaborations for the future, so that we are working with that commission in concert, and they will be better informed and can help us, help support us in that effort. Chayla provided a library report. She talked about the summer learning program and about zone staffing at the Westlake branch. At the Westlake branch, there is a portion of the library dedicated that's referred to as the zone. It's focused mostly on middle school and high school students. It's a very creative spot. But the person who led that project recently left. And we were asking if the zone would continue to be a priority in the absence of that person who had been the champion. And Chayla said that, you know, she thought that that would continue. Let's see. I think that was about it. Our next board meeting is on Tuesday, June 25th. Victoria will still be out of town. It will be at 11 a.m. in the Ceremony Community Room. There were a couple of other items that were covered before we adjourned. Our president, Tom, suggested that we have a meeting of current and past DCPLA board members once or twice a year to just get everyone together and make former board members feel involved and get their input and see if we can have a collaboration that would produce some new ideas. Also, there was talk of a possible author talk for graphic novels. And Tom Norris, again the president, has a connection with Pixar over in Emeryville. So that was seen as something that would be very interesting and attractive if we can find a person from Pixar to come over and do that author talk. Again, the next meeting is June 25th, and that's the end of the report. Are there any questions or input?
Thank you, Mr. Lex. I can help out with the fundraiser with the crazy cars, because I love cars. And I know a little bit about car shows, so I can put in my 1 penny.
Okay, thank you, Teresa. I'll make
You're
sure
welcome.
that Victoria and the committee members know of your interest.
Okay.
So for the you're looking for a graphic novel artist from Pixar? What was that again?
We have sponsored author talks over the years, maybe 1 or 2 a year. And because of the graphic novel 1,500 grant that DCPLA made to the libraries, there was some thought that this would be a good area to have a author talk about. And as the conversation evolved, it was mentioned that Tom knows someone at Pixar and would look into whether or not somebody from Pixar could possibly give that talk. It's very tentative at this point. It's just a point of discussion.
Okay.
Hopefully it will
It sounds like
develop and come to fruition, but that will be in a future report.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lex.
Sorry, last thing. And your board meetings are we can come, right? Sit in on your board meetings or?
Yes, yes, I think you can come and sit in.
Oh, yeah, I realized I would love to meet the board members. I only ever met Victoria. So,
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
Well, in fact, thank you, Joseph. Traditionally, the Board of Trustees has had a representative that has attended the DCPLA board meetings.
Oh,
That also requires that that person be free at that time, 11 o'clock on a Tuesday, so sometimes that's difficult.
Well, we appreciate your report.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. Any announcements or communications?
One quick one, I'll just plug on Wednesday, July 3rd at the Dolger Senior Center. It's the annual Independence Day Barbecue. It's a fundraising event co-sponsored by the the supporters of the Dolger Senior Center, Inc., which is a nonprofit 501c3. They are what DCPLA is to the libraries, the supporters of the Dolger Senior Center
Got
are
it.
to the seniors. So they do a barbecue every Independence Day, and you're all welcome to that.
what
And
time?
What time
runs
is it?
from about 10:30 to 1:30.
30.
There is a cost for lunch.
Mm.
And there's barbecue hot dogs, hamburgers,
Okay,
and veggie
that is
burgers. There's
free.
also a barbecue chicken plate and
fundraiser.
entertainment throughout the day and raffles. And it's a good time.
Joseph, one question. So for the funds that from the DCPLA that they donate, the fundraisers, what is allocate from our budget, or where does it go? Where does it land in the whole budget, the 3.7 million? So like their portion, I know it's
So-
not much,
Yeah, okay, so
but at the same time,
so if-
what is it goes
Okay.
towards?
So historically, if you look at the average, it's about $20,000 a year out of a $3.7 million budget. So it's a very tiny percentage of the overall operating budget. And it's usually targeted for specific things. He referred to the most recent acquisition was for graphic novels from
Okay.
them. There's been pieces of furniture. Library furniture is ridiculously expensive. And a lot of what we've acquired over the years have been different pieces of library in the various,
The Dropbox, right?
and a couple of the
Yeah.
early literacy computer stations.
Yeah,
They help fund those are also quite expensive, and we didn't have funding for it. So it's varied widely. Like I said, it average about $20,000 a year, and anywhere, items between like 1,500 and 2,500, 3,000, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Okay.
Cool.
Thanks.
Thank you. So onto agenda building for the next meeting, and I'm going to ask for some input here. So our next meeting is on, let me see, is it before our coffee with trustees?
I think so.
It is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll put that on the agenda to finalize.
Can I add something while we're on that one? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
absolutely.
Is it okay if if you guys plan out all the dates of the meetings? Like through like the whole annual, the dates of the meetings?
Yeah.
Is that possible?
It's set. We meet,
I think the next one is
The-
July 16th.
Every
what
third
is this,
Tuesday.
the third
Tuesday
Tuesday of every month.
of every-
Okay.
That's the pattern. Set in your outlook
Yeah,
as a
it's-
recurring.
yeah, it's-
But yeah, we schedule in perpetuity the third Tuesday of
Okay.
every month at 6 o'clock here. I can, if it's helpful, I can list all the dates.
Yeah. Can we have it right here?
Sure.
At the end of the,
Oh,
Sure.
that's nice. I have it as like a recurring thing on my
yeah,
phone.
I mean, it's,
For agenda building too, I think we'll hopefully have some sort of draft of what our heat closure policy is, since we do not have one now. In the
Yeah.
event that it ever gets warm in Daly City again.
well, and through through licensing, it's by law that the indoor, once it range from 73 to 78, they have to go home. The parents has to go.
Okay.
So that's licensing
What age?
law. No, what I'm talking about, since if we're gonna visit the policies, like the heat policy, but, because I work with children, and that's one of younger children, and I think it's because your body temperature, you have a certain everybody has a body temperature, that it cannot be higher than the heat itself. So it's automatically your body shuts down. So I think it's good to have that policy. I don't know if we have any.
We don't have one. We'll bring that to
So-
you.
So heat
Yeah.
policy.
A heat
for
policy.
next.
I would really, at this point, I wish I had policies here.
No, that's good. That's a good
I
topic.
really need to look at it.
And then I'm also curious, since the fiscal year ends on June 30th, is it possible for us to get just like an actuals, like a report on the actuals for the year for the
Yeah,
library?
and
I just wanna get a-
one
it
thing I will
just
tell
helps me
you
better
about
understand.
bureaucracy, it takes forever. So our
Where do we
fiscal-
put pressure, John?
Our fiscal year ends June
So I would
30th.
like
The
to see the
books
report.
typically aren't closed until like
August.
October.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So we can give you our version for the department budget to actuals.
Okay.
August would probably be a better time.
Yeah, closer to the closing of the books, right?
So would a year be too complicated?
No,
Or
it's-
can we
it's not-
do
it's-
like a month to month?
Closing the books, I think.
Yeah.
I think the year projected to actuals is something we look at.
Okay.
Or maybe quarterly?
Yeah.
Like in the future, I would like to
Maybe
see it.
moving forward, yeah.
Moving forward, like a quarterly report, like a financial report,
We could do that.
if it's possible.
It is.
Cool.
Thank
Alright.
you.
Thank you. That's it. That's all I got.
Did we want to keep library visits on the agenda?
Yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah, I think we should.
Do you want to decide where each person goes, or are we just going to pop up when we
I
can?
think we're just gonna pop up because
Yeah.
if we decide,
That's fine.
then
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
too
I feel
hard,
like we
yeah.
all
we're
Um,
obligated.
Yeah, okay, so just,
Yeah.
If you are planning a library visit at John Daly next Wednesday at 2 p.m. as part of our summer programming, we are going to be having a magician.
Ooh.
At what time?
2 p.m.
Should have him fix the budget for Daly City Libraries.
I heard there will be a
The
rabbit.
next Wednesday, so the 26th?
The 26th, yes.
and I'm going to keep our video project alive on the agenda for next time as well. Okay.
So when can we, Mr. Joseph, you're going to let us know if together with the Park and Recs, if those students can be able to do this project for us? Or
I will certainly
are we
ask.
just gonna, are we just browsing that? Or when can we make that
I
happen?
will approach them between now and our next.
Okay.
To
Okay.
get a commitment from them.
Yeah. Okay.
Access to the budget.
Public comment? There is none.
There's a lot of public.
We went over. So meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.